Sitting here in Poets' Corner, surrounded by tributes to some of the greatest writers in history, it feels like the perfect setting to reflect on why children's literacy matters so deeply. It all began with a simple signal, just one quiet line posted on the official royal family website and shared across their social media platforms. The wording was so plain, so matter-of-fact, that it almost felt automated. A formal statement from the royal family will be released at 6 p.m. this evening. No context, no advance leaks, no media previews. And just like that, the nation was on edge. Speculation surged within minutes. Was the king stepping down? Had something happened to Camilla? Was there yet another royal scandal brewing? Journalists flocked to palace gates. News anchors filled time with guesses. Analysts picked apart recent royal appearances, public remarks, and subtle body language in search of clues. But no one expected what came next. At exactly 6 p.m., a video appeared on the royal family's social channels. It wasn't Charles. It wasn't Camilla. It was William and Kate. They stood together, not flanked by staff or surrounded by royal grandeur, but alone in a softly lit room inside Kensington Palace. No thrones, no elaborate decor. Just two composed individuals speaking plainly and sincerely. The monarchy isn't just a symbol. It's a responsibility, William said, his voice steady but weighted. And in times of transition, he continued, we must ask ourselves, are we serving the people or just preserving tradition? Then Kate spoke. She looked radiant as always, but her tone carried a new edge, still graceful but unmistakably firm. This isn't about status or ceremony. It's about trust, she said. And now is the time to respect the past while shaping a future that truly represents who we are as a society. The message was brief, but its impact was enormous. William and Kate announced they would take on a more active and independent role within the monarchy, one built on transparency, modern leadership, and rebuilding public confidence. But what truly stood out was the introduction of the Diana Initiative, a foundation created to carry forward the values of the late Princess Diana, with Kate at the forefront as its guiding voice and public leader. This wasn't just another project. It marked a turning point. While King Charles remained the monarch and Camilla continued to be known as Queen, the meaning behind the announcement was unmistakable. The center of gravity within the royal family had shifted, and the world took notice. This wasn't just a statement. It was a transformation. For centuries, the palace had maintained a carefully curated image, delivering announcements through the same formal language, lavish symbols, and distant ceremony. But this time was different. William and Kate didn't just read from a script, they spoke with intent. And what they unveiled went far beyond a symbolic gesture or small structural change. But before we continue, we'd love for you to hit the subscribe button if you're enjoying this video. If you just did, we truly appreciate it. Now, let's get back to the main content. It was a bold reimagining of their place within the institution. A quiet revolution expressed through calm tones and deliberate elegance. At the heart of their message was the outline of a new vision, quickly dubbed by the media as the modern monarchy blueprint. The plan introduced a three-pronged approach to bring the royal family closer to the public and to redefine its future around empathy, not entitlement. William began by acknowledging the growing disconnect between the monarchy and everyday people. He made it clear that clinging to tradition shouldn't mean losing relevance. We can't meet the needs of today's world using outdated models, he said. We've decided to lead by showing up, not by standing above. They would be stepping back from some traditional ceremonial roles, choosing instead to focus on meaningful, hands-on work. No more endless ribbon cuttings or staged photo ops. Their priorities would now include climate resilience, better access to mental health services, maternal health care, and fair opportunities in education. It was the first time in recent memory that senior royals voluntarily stepped down from certain privileges in order to serve more effectively. But it was Kate who delivered the most stirring moment of the evening. With clarity and emotion, she unveiled the Diana Initiative, a global nonprofit designed to continue Princess Diana's legacy of compassion, advocacy, and honesty. Diana's story didn't end when she left us, Kate said. It lives on in those who believe that kindness is a form of strength, who choose to speak when it's easier to stay silent, and who have the courage to care in a world that often rewards indifference. Kate shared that she would not only support the campaign, but take the lead herself, meeting directly with survivors of abuse, advocating for displaced families, and ensuring that Diana's voice remained firmly woven into the royal narrative. That single line sent quiet shockwaves through certain royal circles. It wasn't just about honoring Diana's memory. It was about reclaiming her place in history. William followed with a firm commitment to transparency. From now on, he said, every aspect of their charitable work, how funds were spent, where they went, and the impact they had, would be tracked, made public, and open to review. For too long, this institution has relied on secrecy, William acknowledged, but trust is earned in the open. They promised annual reports, financial disclosures, and independent audits, not just for the Diana Initiative, but for any royal patronages they personally supported. It was a bold move from a royal family long known for its privacy. And that was entirely the point. The reaction was instant. Social media exploded with support. Analysts and journalists hailed it as the most forward-thinking moment the monarchy had seen in decades. But the real response wasn't in what people said. It was in who said nothing. There was silence from Charles and Camilla. No congratulations, no shared photo, not even a repost from the official palace accounts. The absence spoke volumes. This wasn't just an announcement. It may have been a decision made without, and perhaps against, royal approval. And yet, in less than 10 minutes, William and Kate changed the public image of royalty. No longer stiff, distant, or bound by lineage and protocol, but open, present, and undeniably human. They hadn't just addressed the public. They had reshaped the monarchy's path. The applause was loud. The media coverage was immediate. Online platforms filled with praise for the couple's bold and timely redefinition of royal duty. Inside Buckingham Palace, though, the reaction was far from celebratory. Sources described a noticeable chill in the air as the broadcast ended. Not because the initiative was controversial. It wasn't. It was polished, thoughtful, and widely supported. The issue was how it happened, without the full blessing of the monarch. And in royal tradition, that isn't just unexpected. It's nearly unthinkable. Watching from Clarence House, King Charles reportedly turned to his aides and said just 3 words. What did they do? It wasn't curiosity. It was disbelief. His son and daughter-in-law had just stepped into a new era of royal leadership. They did it with confidence, in public, and on their own terms. It was the kind of emotionally resonant, people-first move that his reign had carefully steered away from. And it was done without his command. Or his control. To Queen Camilla, this wasn't just a break from tradition. It felt personal. Kate's introduction of the Diana Initiative, especially her framing of it as reclaiming a truth long buried, landed like a direct challenge. Camilla had spent years rebuilding her image, slowly shifting from the public's other woman to a respected queen consort. But in under 10 minutes, Kate reignited the public's emotional bond with Diana and redirected that powerful sentiment back toward the royal family in a new way. Camilla, according to one aide, was livid. She was overheard saying, "She's trying to make Diana queen from the grave." The palace immediately moved into damage control. Senior advisors, press teams, and longtime courtiers rushed into meetings, trying to draft a response. But they hit an unexpected wall. There was nothing to push back against. William and Kate's message had been overwhelmingly embraced, Any public clarification, correction, or criticism risked sounding bitter, out of step, or even worse, defensive. In the end, the palace chose silence. But silence didn't mean acceptance. King Charles was reportedly frustrated. To him, the statement felt like an early handoff of power, one that could potentially overshadow his own legacy. Still, he knew he couldn't publicly reprimand William without looking small in the eyes of a country that had just rallied behind his son and daughter-in-law. Behind closed doors, dynamics began to shift. Palace staffers started whispering about where the real influence now resided: Kensington Palace. Some worried that Kate was becoming too independent. Others quietly supported the change, seeing in her a kind of leadership that better reflected the mood of the people. Through it all, William and Kate stood firm. There were no political maneuvers, no power plays. They simply stepped into a space the monarchy had long neglected: genuine service. Their actions didn't just stir resentment, they stirred something deeper. For the first time in years, the crown wasn't the center of attention. Kate was, and she wasn't even wearing it. In the days following the announcement, something shifted, not just in the headlines, but in the hearts of the public. The way people spoke about Kate Middleton began to change. She was no longer seen as just the Duchess of Cambridge or the elegant wife of the heir to the throne. She had become something more. To many, she was already a queen in spirit. Across the country, people began calling her the People's Queen, a title once reserved for Diana. And this time, it wasn't just a nickname. It felt like a recognition of something real. But this wasn't just a nickname tossed around lightly. It captured something real. Kate was no longer simply walking alongside the throne. In many ways, she was leading it. Her first solo engagement after the announcement didn't take place at a grand banquet or a palace garden party. Instead, she visited a mental health clinic in Manchester, meeting with teenage girls recovering from trauma. There were no flashing cameras, no formal speech, just a woman who showed up, listened carefully, asked thoughtful questions, and made people feel seen. "She looked us in the eye," one of the girls said afterward. "Not like a royal, like a friend." Soon after, Kate quietly visited a women's shelter in Birmingham. There was no media in tow. Photos only surfaced later, taken by a staff member and posted online. In one image, Kate is seen comforting a woman whose home had been destroyed due to domestic violence. There were no formalities, just compassion, presence, and authenticity. Every gesture sent a message, not to the headlines or the critics, but directly to the people. I see you. I hear you. I'm here with you. Meanwhile, the Diana Initiative was already taking shape. Kate launched a foundation to provide free counseling for children coping with the loss of a parent, drawing on the emotional experiences William and Harry endured after their mother's death. She also announced a global summit focused on women's health rights, something no high-ranking royal had dared to champion so publicly. But the moment that truly defined her came during a televised town hall in Cardiff. Speaking unscripted, without aides or notes, Kate addressed the future of the monarchy with striking honesty. "We are not here to rule from above. We are here to walk alongside. And if we forget that, we no longer deserve the public's trust." The room fell silent. In that moment, Kate did what no coronation, no PR campaign, and no decades of image repair could do for Charles or Camilla. She gave the monarchy something it had long lost: its humanity. The media embraced her. So did the public. Her approval ratings soared, reaching a level never seen before, even topping Diana's popularity in the early 90s. Inside the palace, though, the atmosphere was tense. Camilla was reportedly shaken by how quickly public sentiment shifted. Charles, too, felt increasingly sidelined, not out of anger, but because he was no longer the focal point. The spotlight had moved, and no matter how much anyone tried to downplay it, the reality was clear. The people had already chosen their queen, and she didn't need a crown to prove it. She didn't need to sit on the throne. Kate had achieved something far more powerful. She earned the kind of love once reserved for Diana. But unlike those before her, she chose to use it not for status, but for purpose. King Charles III had waited a lifetime for the crown. Through scandal, heartbreak, and long periods of public disapproval, he held fast to the belief that his time would come, that his reign would usher in an era of calm, dignity, and earned respect. But when that moment finally arrived, it was met not with celebration, but with fatigue. And now, less than a year into his rule, the quiet authority he had hoped to establish was beginning to erode. Not because of rebellion or controversy, but because of Kate Middleton. The monarchy hadn't collapsed under his leadership, but it had shifted. The moral center, once firmly anchored in the figure of the reigning monarch, had begun to move. And though Charles still held the crown, he was increasingly sidelined in the evolving narrative now shaped by his son and daughter-in-law. In the days following William and Kate's announcement, the palace scrambled to respond, not with outrage, but with cold formality. A statement was released, neutral in tone and carefully worded. His Majesty the King supports all initiatives that serve the broader good of the Commonwealth and modern society. But behind palace walls, things were far from calm. According to insiders, Charles was deeply unsettled, not by the message itself, but by the independence with which it had been delivered. There had been no advance approval, no coordinated communications plan, no adherence to the usual royal procedures. For a king raised within the strict traditions of royal protocol, it was a worst-case scenario, a trusted heir breaking from the script and being praised for doing so. If Charles felt shaken, Camilla was reportedly furious. For her, the Diana initiative felt less like a tribute and more like a challenge. She had spent years carefully rebuilding her public image, working on issues like domestic violence and literacy, trying to redefine how the public saw her. But it had never been enough to escape Diana's looming presence. And now Kate wasn't just referencing that legacy, she was owning it. Not gently, not in passing, but boldly. It was no longer about Diana's memory. It was about Diana's rightful successor. Behind closed doors, Camilla reportedly demanded a meeting with senior palace staff. According to leaked memos, she expressed frustration that the palace had lost control of the narrative. She pushed for Kate's initiative to be brought under the umbrella of the official royal foundation, where it could be overseen more directly by the palace. Charles, however, was more restrained. He understood that any move to restrict or diminish William and Kate's efforts would likely backfire. And badly. His advisors warned him that public opinion had already crowned Kate in spirit, if not in title. Any sign of jealousy or resistance from the current monarch would only highlight his waning relevance. Still, understanding the situation didn't mean he was prepared to adapt to it. Behind the scenes, Charles voiced his frustration to his inner circle, unsure of how to maintain control in a world that seemed to be gravitating elsewhere. He had waited his entire life for this chapter. But now, just as he stepped into it, the spotlight had already moved on. It wasn't exactly resentment toward William. It was something quieter and heavier. A kind of mourning for a moment that had come too late, for a crown that waited longer than it should have, for a reign that was beginning to feel like a footnote in someone else's story. Because no matter the title he held or the crown Camilla wore, Charles was no longer the emotional center of the monarchy. The public had found their guide in William. And through Kate, through the memory of Diana, they had rediscovered something deeper: strength, warmth, purpose. What Charles and Camilla still had were the ceremonies, the traditions, the official engagements. But they no longer had the people's trust. They wore the regalia, but the meaning behind it felt lost. Behind William's calm presence and carefully chosen words was a decision, quiet but unmistakable, one that would define his future not just as a king, but as a man determined to reshape what monarchy should mean. While the palace scrambled to contain the emotional aftershocks of his and Kate's announcement, William stood firm. He didn't retract anything. He didn't offer explanations. He didn't ask for approval. For the first time in years, he wasn't waiting for permission, because he didn't need it. He was leading now. Sources close to Kensington Palace said William had expected some pushback from his father and stepmother. What he hadn't expected, and what stayed with him most, was the chill in their reaction. "I'm not worried," he reportedly told aides. "This isn't about debate. It's about direction, strategy, change." This wasn't rebellion for the sake of it. For William, it was about ending a cycle. The same cycle that had wounded his mother, the same one that had threatened to break his wife, the same silence that now risked turning the monarchy into nothing more than a hollow emblem. Privately, he shared a message with a senior advisor that revealed the heart of his conviction. "I won't inherit a house built on silence. If I have to rebuild it, so be it." That belief didn't appear overnight. It had been quietly growing for years. William had seen how the institution handled Diana's pain, not by healing it, but by burying it. He had watched Camilla's public image carefully reworked, not through humility, but through calculated media strategy. And he had seen Kate asked to keep smiling, no matter the scrutiny or the attempts to diminish her. That era, in his mind, was over. After the announcement, William made deliberate choices to reinforce the message. He declined invitations aimed at reuniting the narrative under his father's leadership. He rejected efforts to fold the Diana Initiative into the larger royal foundation, insisting it stay separate and independent. And most tellingly, he began reaching out to the younger generation of royals in private, urging them to help shape a new vision of service. One of the first to respond was Princess Beatrice. Their quiet meeting at Frogmore Cottage wasn't just a show of solidarity. It marked the beginning of something new. It was a matter of unity, one that went beyond image or titles. Beatrice, still carrying the weight of family betrayal over questions of her paternity, had become something more than a royal figure. She represented truth, spoken despite consequence. And William made one thing clear: her place in the family would never depend on her silence. He reached out to Zara Tyndall and even extended a hand to Princess Eugenie, despite the growing distance between them in recent years. The conversations were casual, but the message behind them was unmistakable. This family cannot survive on bloodlines alone. It must be grounded in values. Within weeks, subtle but meaningful changes began to unfold across the royal landscape. Younger royals started planning their charitable efforts through Kensington Palace instead of Buckingham. Media requests began shifting. Photographers followed William and Kate, not Charles and Camilla. The transition wasn't official, but it didn't need to be. It was already happening. And through it all, William remained calm. He never gave impassioned speeches or dramatic ultimatums. He didn't have to. By embracing Kate's vision, honoring his mother's legacy, and standing for truth even when it threatened the stability of his own lineage, he did something no monarch had done in a very long time. He chose legacy over blood. He showed the world that the monarchy's future wouldn't simply belong to whoever wore the crown next. It would belong to whoever earned it. When the palace first teased a major announcement, few expected anything truly groundbreaking. Most assumed it would be ceremonial, another gesture wrapped in vague language aimed at pacifying the press. What they got was something different, something honest. They saw William and Kate not repeating tradition, but reshaping it. And in that moment, they did something no modern royal had dared to do. They told the truth. Not the carefully packaged version approved by advisors, but the real truth, born from lived experience, from pain, from Diana's legacy, and from Kate's quiet determination. William made a conscious decision to stop the cycle of silence that had haunted his family for generations. The announcement didn't change titles or the line of succession, but it did reclaim something far more powerful than a title: public trust. When Kate stood before the world and vowed to carry Diana's mission forward, she didn't just honor the past. She revived it. She gave the monarchy back something it had lost: its soul, and the public felt it. Kate took on a role no coronation could grant her. She became the people's queen, not by claim, but by action. And William? He did something even more rare. He stepped back, not in presence, but in pride. He didn't place her next to him as a symbol. He walked with her as a true partner, as his equal, as his guide. That choice, quiet, graceful, and transformative, revealed what kind of king he is becoming. Not one obsessed with control, but one devoted to purpose. Yes, Charles still wears the crown, and Camilla remains on the throne. But in the hearts and minds of the people, the monarchy has already moved forward. The future isn't cloaked in royal robes or marked by gold crests. It's walking a step behind a woman who listens first, leads with empathy, and reminds the world of another woman who once stood alone in silence. The monarchy didn't fall that day. It began to heal. And it all started with one simple statement that changed everything.